Okay, ladies. So Jamila, we were on the farm all morning. And then Jasmine, we went to Gooder and we made the Gooder mobile experience at Big Bethel, everything. So I just wanted us to come together and have a beautiful conversation. Yes. Y'all feed so many of us in our community. We gonna feed y'all today. We have a special meal prepared by Chef Zaza of Zaza's Kitchen. And it's inspired by some of the things that we were picking today. It's got our basils, our tomatoes, some good salmon in here. So I'm ready to dig in. But y'all ready?
I'm ready. I'm always ready for food.
I know, right?
Let's get all fancy. Put our napkins on.
Okay.
And get real fancy. Here we go. Now, I really want to take it back to the little girls that you all were that prepared you or shaped you as the women you are today.
Yeah.
We all have a story or an experience that is the reason why we became who we are in our careers. Talk to me a little bit about some of those experiences that shaped you to be a farmer and to be a woman who literally is doing her best to end hunger and to feed people. Maybe a specific story that you always think of like, ooh, that's why I do this.
I can tell you, it's so funny. I always think of it ever since my dad told me, but he said when I was around 7, so I'm a military kid, so I've lived a little bit of everywhere, that he and I went to DC for something. And that was really the first time I saw homelessness on like a really heavy level. And he said like the entire plane ride back, I kept on asking like, why don't they have a home? Why don't they have food? Like, why? Like, it just was baffling to me that could be a thing. And so to see that this is still where I am years later. And then my mom had got me Elanya Van Zant. She had like this little journal for teenage girls. And I found it recently, and randomly in mine, it was like, what do you want to be known for? And in mine says doing something good. And this is when I was like 13 or 14. So that's like a very long time ago. So those are like two things that are just like epiphany.
Right.
I would say.
Like when you look back over your life, you can always pick those things out. I love that. What about for you?
Yeah, no, for me, it was definitely sort of my family's experience. My mom just keeping her experience of growing up in Jamaica, like really fresh and just talking about that. And then also my dad's from Trinidad and I got a chance to live in Trinidad. And you're just surrounded by food. Everything, every tree, every bush, is just producing something. I remember climbing mango trees, climbing tamarind trees. I mean, it was just there, soursop in the back, like all of it. And so just to sort of coming into an environment where that isn't, you're like, it shouldn't be. And so, I mean, just drawn to those stories and then just having that experience.
Do you remember anything specific that you learned to grow with either of your parents?
Like in Trinidad, I mean, there was a big garden, but it was like, it wasn't so much like a manufactured garden. It was just like, literally, it was just everywhere. Food, it was like you were living in the Garden of Eden. You know what I mean? In the Caribbeans, like the food is around you. And nobody's hungry in the Caribbeans. They're just like, there's food everywhere. So like, that's not the thing that people sort of worry about. But then to come to a country that is so rich and so much wealth, and people literally don't have food to eat. It's baffling. It's baffling. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I loved both of your stories. It reminds me of so much. I mean, growing up for me, I was literally the kid that was always watching 106 Park, like all the TV shows. I was always the kid in the Borders, reading entertainment magazines. Like I've always been obsessed with storytelling, entertainment, like just the environment of growing to something. So shout out to the little girls that made space for the women that we are today, for real. And speaking of DC, that's where I grew up, child.
I know.
It's known for the chocolate city. DC is known to have Black affluence and Black wealth just as much as Atlanta is known. And even so, like you said, there's still such a gap. Food insecurity is still such a thing. And I'm glad that we are able to have this conversation because it's not just happening in Atlanta and DC.
No.
It's happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. And so like when we think about food insecurity as a growing crisis, this is going to be a big question, but how do we begin to solve it? And what are we missing from the conversation that people aren't talking about, especially with both of you and the work that you do? What are some things that you're like, this needs to be talked about more that no one is saying?
I think one thing I'll just speak on for farmers is how many Black farmers are losing their land.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that I think is a big one. So, you know, social media, you always think of like Black Twitter or Black X or whatever it's called now, right? I know, but you know, TikTok, everything else, this is something people need to be using their voices to be speaking about because we grow so much food and we're losing our farms at astounding rates. So that's one thing. I also think just acknowledging that food insecurity is more prevalent in Black communities and that we should be speaking about it more is really important. And I think that's why I am so passionate about the work that I do because it affects people that look like me at far greater rates. And I think that it is high time that someone that looks like me be given the same resources that go to so many other organizations to solve a problem that's affecting my community and doing it in a way of dignity. I just think people have to be used to and open to doing things differently. You know, I think that's the biggest thing when we talk about using technology to solve hunger, to address food waste. A lot of times people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm only going to support my local food bank. And I think you should, but you should also be open to other things because food banks have been around for over 5 decades and people are experiencing hunger at far greater rates. So be open to looking at other ways to solve old problems, I would say.
I really love that answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, you know, bringing up the point of Black farmers like losing land, and I think just the issue around farming in general, the work of farming, and understanding that, you know, we live in a very sort of global economy in the sense of like food is coming in from all over the world, you know what I mean, to feed us. And there's so much food being produced here, but somehow it's not getting to the people that need it, you know what I mean? And so you gotta stay engaged in your politics, you gotta stay engaged in local policy, because that's kind of what drives where investment goes. You know, because it was really divestment out of our communities that removed what was there. I mean, grocery stores were in these communities. You know what I mean?
Sometimes owned by people that look like us.
And owned by people that look like us in those communities. And Black farmers were growing food and feeding their communities. Then there was white flight. There was like that drive of, you know, like really from Fair for Our Lives, like Black farmers left the South and moved to the North. So a lot of those farms got abandoned. A lot of those farms were stolen. So there's just like a missing gap of information of people understanding what contributed to this, to the situation that we're in now. And so part of what I do with my urban farm is just, first of all, expose people to what it looks like to grow something. Like, this is what farm work looks like. And people will come and they'll work on the farm and they're like, wow, this is a lot of hard work. They're like, you know, hats off to you, but then it puts in their mind like, wait a minute, this is work I should value. These are people that should be valued. This is not, you know, these are people that should be valued and should, you know, it should be like dignified. This is dignified work and this is necessary work. And I think that became even more clear during the pandemic. Because it was like, oh, these are the essential workers. Like, I mean, we all sitting at home, but we still need to eat. So farmers had to keep farming. People had to keep working in hospitals, things like that. Right, exactly. I'm sure you worked like crazy.
It was like the busiest.
So just reframing the value of workers, farm workers, and just understanding the history and where we are now, and just trying to get more people into it. More people into it.
There were literal like two sides of tracks coming up. Like the traumas of that is real, but also, like you said, there were mom and pop grocery stores. Like you knew who was growing your food, who was responsible for feeding our community. And I love that y'all brought that back to the forefront, because I think that's an important part we don't talk about. And speaking of, we are in Atlanta. The grounding place of many of the major civil rights leaders, the birthplace. You know, we know Dr. King went to Morehouse. We know John Lewis is from like one of the sons and greatest leaders ever. And when we think about the rich historical background of Atlanta, we know that civil rights is one of the major things that came out of this beautiful place. How can we start looking at food insecurity as a civil rights issue? How can we make sure that people know that? So we are in Atlanta, obviously, which has a rich background in the civil rights movement. The leaders came from here in so many senses of the word. Shout out to Dr. King John Lewis, so many people we can speak of. But when we think about food insecurity, it actually is a form of civil rights. Like, how can we shift the nation's mindset to understand that food insecurity is a civil right?
Yeah, and I don't really...
Food security, excuse me.
Yeah,
food security is a right.
Yeah,
it's a civil right.
Food is just a right that
That's what I was
everyone
about to say. I feel like food should be a fundamental human right. Like, it should be a human right. And so many people don't have access to it. I mean, even today I was telling you about how many seniors we get emails from that are telling us they're getting $11, $16 a month in food stamps. And I'm just kind of like, what can you buy? You know, I don't care how good Kroger's sale is.
No.
You're not getting a lot with $11 or $16. You're not going to feed yourself like that for a month. So I really see myself as a civil rights activist fighting for hunger and fighting for the fact that 1 in 6 children go hungry in America. For Black and brown children, is 1 in 3. So it's kind of like you could look at a class of 10 students and likely 4 of them that are Black are food insecure.
Yeah.
That's such a sad reality. Like, whew. That stat makes me upset.
Yeah, it really is sad. And I mean, you know, like you said again, food is a human right. You know what I mean? And it really is important for our government and our, you know, society to understand that and make sure like you shouldn't be going hungry. You shouldn't be going hungry. You shouldn't be a full-time working adult and still not be able to put food on your plate.
Exactly.
So part of the challenge that I've had as a farmer is, you know, my farm is a business enterprise and, you know, I still have to gotta put food on my plate. You know what I mean? And so it's been a challenge trying to figure out how to sort of try to close that gap on affordability for community members, but also still be able to feed my family. And so it really takes public policy. You know what I mean? It takes partnerships with nonprofits and other organizations that have come in and supported the work that we do so that they help to close that gap, you know, with doubling the value of EBT at markets. So those $16 become, you know what I mean, at least $28, you know what I mean? So things like that. But that also, you know, some of the work that I do is donated to, you know, seniors in the community through my partnership with a nonprofit right in the neighborhood, because like seniors are so food insecure and it's insane. So like children and seniors, the two most vulnerable people, right? And they've lived their whole life. You know, they've carried so much, they've made it to that beautiful right community. They made the community and you're like, you can't eat?
Or they make critical decisions every month, like, am I going to pay for my prescriptions?
Right.
Many of them that they have to take with food. Or am I going to eat food? So it's like no one should have to decide, am I going to be able to like eat or am I going to be able to live?
Right.
Like that's kind of the decision they're making.
Right. And so it's really like a holistic approach we need to take. Because I mean, like you said, you got to take, you know, you've got to have affordable healthcare so that you're not making a decision around food based on can I afford whatever it is I need from a medicine perspective. And we need to make sure people are paid good wages so they can buy food. I mean, inflation is real. You know, things don't cost the same. I mean, those costs are going up every year.
I think I knew that inflation was crazy when I saw that Kool-Aid was like 3 for $1.25 because I remember Kool-Aid being like 10 for $1. Like so to see that it's like 3 for like $1.25 or even like ramen noodles being like 45, 50 cents. Clearly, these are the things I lived on in college.
But I mean, but still, it's an indicator because these are the things that people who are pinching pennies, you know what I mean? Ramen noodle was a meal, and my mom would be like, okay, you're eating ramen, but let's get a pack of frozen veggies and like try to make it healthy. You know what I mean? Put an egg on it, you know, and that was like, but that was a meal.
I mean, that's so true. I am so... That is a disheartening figure to realize, but it's also something that empowers us to work harder. It is the reason, the fuel for us to keep showing up for our communities.
Absolutely.
Hopefully y'all work together because it sounds like a partnership made in heaven right there, you know? Because like just making sure our elders are fed, our seniors who built literally all that we experience can't get to the days they're supposed to relax and have more stress.
Yeah.
And so it's just there's a whole issue around healthcare,
Right.
free healthcare. A whole other episode. But
Yeah.
I do want to make sure that we
Yeah.
make that point. So thank y'all for making that. Now Kroger is all about zero hunger, zero waste, as we know. And when we think on a global scale, it's again a very large conversation. But you guys can just tell me whatever comes to mind. How do we work to make sure there is a better pipeline for sustainability when it comes to ending food hunger at a global scale?
That's a good question. I think, still a lot is rooted in education. I think a lot of people don't understand how much food goes to waste. I do think that businesses play a big part, on what could go to people that are food insecure. There's a lot of work that I've been seeing happening in other countries in Europe. So like in France and in Italy, businesses are actually fined up to 10,000 euro a day for every occurrence they waste food, and it doesn't go to a nonprofit. So that gets businesses like doing it. When you're like, when you got that kind of policy, do I want to spend 10,000 euro or do I want to feed people? And then it's very clear, like,
you find a solution.
People,
exactly.
And then they find the partner. So you have where it's literally illegal. I remember being in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and I was telling someone what I do, and he was like, "Oh, that would never be a problem here. We would never let people just be homeless and hungry and have nothing. Like a church or someone would feed them or open it." And I was like, like you said, coming from Trinidad here, you're probably thinking this is such a rich nation. Why does this waste happen? And we get TikTok videos and viral videos every single day from restaurants and businesses that are throwing away food. I mean, you see these things, they go viral.
Yeah.
So I do think businesses have to step up. I do think that policy would be huge.
I think
there
policy
could be some
would
policy.
be extremely huge to drive, you know what I mean? Because if policy changes, then it kind of forces
Behaviors
people to change. It changes. So I'm always get involved in government, get involved in policy, advocate for these type of programs that, really encourage. First of all, we have to see it as a human right.
Yes.
Everybody needs to understand that we should not be going hungry in this country that is so rich, and that we need to change our policies so that that kind of waste doesn't happen. My first farm was at a middle school, and we're literally farming, and there's a cafeteria door, and we thought, we're gonna grow food and get the kids healthy food, but the system around which food is sourced to schools, oh my God, it's locked up behind big, multinational companies that literally they have the contract for the whole school district. So that closed literally within 10 feet of the door of the cafeteria. We couldn't get in. But 20, 30 years ago, they used to cook food in the cafeteria. They used to get fresh produce and they would be back there cooking. Now, the policies has changed. They just warm, heat, and serve. All of that is done somewhere else. So we've totally changed the way that we live. We've changed the structure of how food gets to us, how it gets to our schools. And most kids, the meal that they eat is at school. You know what I mean? That is the meal that they eat in breakfast and lunch. That is their main meal.
And that's why we started putting our grocery stores inside of schools. So we have our mobile grocery stores, but we also have about 17 grocery stores that live inside of schools right now. And it's the same thing because we realize that that's where kids are eating. But also, as I told you earlier, hunger is really about logistics. If it's housing, transportation, and food, that's what people are spending money on. So if you're struggling in housing and you're struggling in transportation, you're struggling in food. So we felt like students are already getting on the bus, going to school. If we could put a free grocery store in the school, now the student could bring home food, and that they work so well. But there has to be more done.
There has to be
more.
A lot.
I think it's just, I think a lot of policy, a lot of education, and I think just the awareness of this is happening, and it's really, really bad. And it's getting worse, which is kind of scary. The pandemic additional SNAP benefits ended in March. And we saw probably an increase, I would say 100% increase of people that are when are we getting excess food? Because what happened is that money was intended to just help through the pandemic. But when food prices went up, that increase actually helped them be able to purchase food. So I think that's something. And I think the other thing I want to say is that there's a lot of ignorance around hunger where people are like, oh, they should just work, or, you know, they need to get a job, or they need to, there are
And people working.
Yeah, there are 19% of this country is still making minimum wage.
Yeah.
So we got to have conversations about that. You're not making enough money at, what is it, $7.35 an hour, $7.55 an hour
to pay
It's not
rent.
even $8.
Yeah.
To pay rent, to pay, especially after taxes, to pay rent, to get all this food. So that's another conversation.
And that's where people make those bad food choices. You know what I mean? Because you're like, I've got $16.
Yeah.
You know, what am I gonna buy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've got to buy like the cheapest, most inexpensive thing I could buy possible, and that'll just carry me. You know what I mean?
Or you're shopping at the liquor store.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You're shopping at the liquor store, the dollar store.
and
You're
spending
not
a lot
buying
more money.
fresh. Right,
Yes.
exactly. You're not buying the best. So
There are a lot of streets in Atlanta where there may be 10 to 12 liquor stores on that street and no grocery store.
yeah.
That's the reality.
that's a
what
real
we're
struggle.
working in. And I
And I
think
mean,
why, that's what I was gonna say, it's why like conversations like this matter, and movements like what you all are a part of, what you're building, what you're sharing really, really matters. And I'm sad because I could talk to y'all all day about this, but we only have so much time because we gotta eat and make sure you eat, because they also told me they don't be eating because they work in food, y'all, and we gotta make sure they eat.
I'm eating now.
We taking care of each other.
I'm eating now.
Period. Now, in a perfect world, you know, we just talked about all the realities. We talked about all the problems. We talked about even some solutions around policy, around people like you who are doing the work to help put grocery stores in schools, you actually growing farms and teaching people how to grow their own food. In a perfect world, in 5 years, if it was a perfect world, what would be in place for a better future for food access across the nation? What would you like to see more of? If it was a perfect world, what would you like to see in place to help end hunger and waste?
Yeah, I want to see a lot more community around farms. Farms like really being part of sort of like the lived environment of where people are. Ability for them to access, so we need better transportation. People need better wages so they can actually afford good food. And I just want to see farms and farm in, and that means developing farms within urban areas, but also like investing in rural communities where like a lot of that food is really grown. You know what I mean? And building up those communities. So.
That's a great answer.
I mean, I get so scary when I hear a perfect world, because I think for me, a perfect world, I would love for nobody to be hungry. Like, in 5 years, I don't know if we'll be there yet, but I do think if we can have more of our mobile grocery stores, our in-school grocery stores, our in-senior home grocery stores operating, we can see a huge dent in food insecurity. I'd love to see equal dispersion of funding that is going to, you know, farms and other kind of hunger relief organizations, that it could be more equal, because there's no reason why one organization gets $100 million plus a year and another organization gets 200,000. Like, that's not an equal distribution
And
of
they're
how
serving
funding.
different populations. They're not connected and
They're not
communicating
connected.
that
Like,
need
you
it.
know, and I don't want to see competition amongst people that are trying to solve hunger. I think that's crazy to me. Like, we should be really working together to try and
Absolutely.
solve
It's
the
crazy.
problem. So
Right.
I think those are some of the things I'd like to see in a perfect world.
I know a perfect world is so far away.
I know, I get scary when
It's scary, right?
Yeah.
But I do, you know, I think we are all, you know, striving to work towards a more perfect union, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's the work that we all do. That's why I use my platform. That's why you show up to the farm every day. That's why you show up to Gooder every day. And that's why you created it. And so I know perfect is far, but I do hope that better is near and closer than ever.
And better was in control.
Absolutely.
Better.
You know? But I think perfect. You know,
I feel like
around is that.
Like, in a perfect world, you got to hold a vision.
You're right.
You know, you got to hold a vision and like work towards it. You know what I mean?
Yes, right.
And you may not always get there, but as long as you're working towards it, you know, and you got people that are joining you in that, you know, we're getting better. So, you know,
that's kind of what I tell myself, is like the principle of like incremental gains. Like, I'm not going to be 100% better tomorrow, but if like, you know, I can get a little bit better every single day, I'm happy.
And those ripples do make an effect, because
long term.
I started my farm and I've had so many people reach out. I'm really inspired by what you're doing. How can I do it? They're like trying to put family land into farming, like things like that. So it's like, you don't realize that you are setting an example and you are inspiring. You know what I mean? We are like it. Yeah. So, we just gotta chip away, step by step. Absolutely.
And as we wrap this interview, first of all, I am so honored to be sitting here between both of y'all because I could cry when we just had this conversation. Knowing that y'all are actually here doing the work just makes my heart sing, and I'm sure there's hundreds of women, thousands of women that are inspired by you all to continue to do the same thing. Women, men, everybody is inspired. So again, thank you so much for the tireless work you do, and thank you for showing up for us. Truly. Absolutely. But I asked y'all this question because we gotta make sure we get to this. But what are your hopes for each of your brands, your farm and your company, Gooder? What are the hopes for your near future? What do you hope to accomplish? What does the future look like for your brands? What are you excited to share that you're working on that you want other people to know about? Or so we can support it too.
I just want to be existing still. I think that's my biggest thing. Like, it's so hard to kind of exist as a business. I started this business with nothing. And pitch competitions and taking $5,000-$10,000 to build, what I have now, where we have over 100 employees and we're continuing to grow, but I think we should be so much bigger. I think we should be in every single city, in every state, because hunger exists everywhere. So that is my hope. I hope that we can continue to exist and grow. But I hope at one point in this future, that we will not be needed. Like, that's the biggest hope. Like that what we will have put into place will give people access to food even in their darkest hour at all times.
And real quick before you go, how can we support in that growing? Is there?
Reach out, connect us. We're trying to get into more schools. We're always looking for businesses that are basically wasting food that want to kind of pivot and start getting food to communities. We are looking for more partners and sponsors to fund our mobile grocery stores, to fund the work that we're doing to feed people in the community for free. So we got to go out and we got to procure the food and we got to work with farmers. And, just like you said, we have to pay for the food. It just doesn't get given to us. I think that's the model that people are used to. It's like, we're not taking canned item donations at the store. Like, we literally are making sure people have access to fresh food and fresh meats, and that costs money. It costs money. So money,
you can donate
introductions.
On the site.
You can on our Gooder Foundation website.
Period. Donation coming. Now, what do you need?
For me, my vision for the farm is to, right now is just a working farm. We're growing and we're just getting food out to people, and we want to create a space where people can come engage more, learn more, and then also a vision for sort of like, Patchwork City Farms was a vision of like more farms around cities, you know what I mean? And just really cultivating those green spaces, because there's so many empty green spaces and everything doesn't need to become a building. You know what I mean?
We have enough apartments.
We have enough apartments. We have enough high rises. We have food issues. Why don't we turn those spaces into some farms, into some,
grocery stores,
some great, some of these local grocery stores and places like that. So that's my vision. And just to kind of get more people, engaged, involved, grow it, and just, we're embarking on a campaign to build out Patchwork in a much more robust way so people can engage and learn a lot more.
Perfect. And I'm going to ask you the same thing. We can donate on your website.
Yes, there is most certainly a donation button on the website, and then we'll be launching like our big, this is what's coming, in the next month.
What's the name of the website?
Patchwork City Farms.
.com.
Yep.
Sometimes .org.net.
We'll
make sure we get the
.com and Instagram, Facebook, Patchwork City Farm.
Thank you.
Thank you
all,
and thank you for this amazing conversation, because what I appreciate is the roundness of the conversation, and that you covered all of the topics and not just one angle. You know what I mean? It was like a really good conversation.
Thank you. It's so much bigger than anything we'll be able to solve over one meal. That's what I'm saying. This is just to spark
multiple sessions.
Exactly. Look, we need to do a whole thing about just this, right? But I think what's dope is that we get to spark people's dialogue and understanding of what the reality is, and that if they, first of all, shouldn't be ashamed if they're in this situation, but that there's also people that are worried and working to make sure that hunger no longer exists in this country.
It definitely
we
keeps
got
me
a
up
long
at night.
exactly.
I
We
mean,
got
it
a
definitely
long
does.
way to go.
Yeah.
But with y'all,
Yeah.
we have a lot of hope. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I love y'all so much. I knew y'all before. I was a fan, but now I just love
Oh,
y'all even
yeah,
more. I doubled down on my
absolutely.
obsession. So thank you guys so much for
Thank you
being
for
here.
having me.
Of course.
Cheers.
This was
y'all.
awesome. Cheers.